This podcast is made for fun and is not subsidized. Hello and welcome to Orinda Talks Fantasy and Sci-Fi. I'm your host Orinda, and today we are going to talk about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers with Captain Blade. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is an American superhero television series that premiered on August 28, 1993. It is the first entry of the Power Rangers franchise and became in 1990 a pop culture phenomenon along with a line of toys, action figures, and other merchandise. The series was produced by MMPR Productions and distributed by Saban Entertainment, while the show's merchandise was produced and distributed by Bandai Entertainment. Our guest today is Captain Blade, and he has his own business in video audio editing. At the moment, he is also work for the game Space Engineer and has a passion for nerdy things. Hello, Captain Blade. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. If I say it's Morphin time, what is your reaction to that?
One of the greatest series of all times.
Yeah, Mighty Morphin is also one of mine. And how have you ever become interested in Mighty Morphin?
Well, for me personally, it actually started with Lightspeed Rescue because I was a bit too young to remember Mighty Morphin, but they started showing some reruns whenever I was a lot younger, and that's kind of how I picked it up that way. At the same time, I was also taking martial arts classes, so kind of a double dose, I guess.
Yeah, I can understand with that because my brother had the same way. He loved Mighty Morphin, and he also have been doing martial arts his whole life, so he also liked it in that way. So you could identify yourself with some of the characters, I guess.
If I had to pick, I would say more so for myself. I don't know that I could identify with just strictly one, but I would say I identify with Billy because I tend to, be more of the techno type of person. But also, I would say a little bit with Tommy because he took no crap, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think, and in that way, Tommy was more a leader than Jason or Rocky.
I would definitely say he was more of a leader than Rocky, purely because of experience with everything that had happened. And he was more, I would say, more outgoing and more confident than Rocky. Not that he was bad. I would say, as far as leadership, I would actually say him and Jason, to me at least, are fairly equal.
Yeah, I think so too. So, how big of a fan are you? Do you have collectibles or going to Comic Cons or?
Well, I actually have, sitting about 2 feet above my head, are imports of the Deca Ranger morphers, which, for people that may not be familiar, that is the Japanese or Super Sentai version of SPD.
Yeah.
Then I have quite a few more morphers. I still actually have my Titanium Ranger morpher from when I was a kid.
Cool.
I've got some of the Dino Thunder stuff, some of the other morphers. It's I'd have to get them all out before I could tell you everything that I have. I would say close to 15 of them. But for me as well, I also have a special connection to the Dino Thunder series, especially, but also to Ninja Storm a little bit, and also SPD.
Okay.
Because whenever I was 15 years old, I was really bad sick, and I'll spare you a lot of the details, but let's just say a nearly fatal infection had built up in my body, and I was pretty much bedridden for about 2 years almost. And pretty much my only contact with the outside world was through an Xbox, and some of the only things I had on TV to watch were reruns of Dino Thunder, SPD, and Ninja Storm. And as a young kid, I would see this, and it's like, if they, even on a show, can't quit, then I can't quit either. So you could almost say, in a way, without sounding melodramatic, that Dino Thunder, SPD, and Ninja Storm kind of saved my life in that aspect. Definitely mentally speaking, of course.
Mm-hmm. Are there also your favorite series? Or...
I don't know that I have a favorite series overall. I would say out of the different eras, I could probably pick a favorite. From some of the more modern ones, which I would consider to be like your, I would say, post RPM era,
Mm-hmm.
I would probably have to say that Dino Charge would be my favorite out of that, just because there was more variety in the Zords, more variety in the team. They seemed to what's the word I'm looking for? They seem to be more cohesive together, even with such a large team. Then I would say from Wild Force up to RPM, I would definitely have to say Dino Thunder for the reasons I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
And then before Wild Force, I would have to say it would be Lightspeed Rescue, because that's actually what got me into the franchise. But Mighty Morphin is definitely high up there on the list, because you can't forget the classics.
No, and for my personal, I think Mighty Morphin is still one of the best, because story-wise, but also, yeah, maybe it's more also for me like nostalgic, and it's something what reminds me from my own youth, and I always watched it with my younger brother, and he is also the one who was collecting it. So yeah, that's why I have been involved with Mighty Morphin. Um, do you have a favorite ranger of a villain in Mighty Morphin?
For villain, I would probably have to say Lord Zed. just because of the pure intimidation factor that guy had when he first showed up. It's just, you knew it was hitting the fan when he showed up.
Mm-hmm.
You just knew it was going to go down. You knew it wasn't just regular. I guess what I'm trying to say, it wasn't the regular run-of-the-mill fight anymore. The Rangers definitely had to bring their A game and step it up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
As far as Ranger goes, as cliche as it may sound to some people and stereotypical, I would have to say Tommy. But the reason I would say Tommy is because the guy started out under Rita's spell, obviously. Spoilers for people that haven't seen it yet, even after 20 years. But he went from being, I would say, somewhat hesitant about being a ranger using his powers to arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest rangers of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, to me, he overcame a lot more than some of the other rangers did, and just had that leader personality, which I have to respect.
Yeah, that's true. Well, there is also a duo that is um, being the comical note in Mighty Morphin, and then I'm talking, of course, about Bill and Skull. Any reaction on that one?
The Bulk and Skull Bunch, I think they're very underrated for the comic relief that they provide.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's just, when those guys were on screen, at least from the way it appeared on screen, they seemed to have a good chemistry with each other. I don't know about the actors off the screen, that kind of stuff, or anything about that, positive, negative. But it was definitely an interesting dynamic that I guess made the show seem more human, if you will.
Well, what I always think of them is that the comic note of them is so great, and uh, they never could do that actually again in the following series. And the only thing that's a little bit coming back is in the last series of Mighty Morph of Beast Mode, and don't know if you have seen that one. But yeah, I always have loved Bill and Skull. They are underrated in what they have done for the show. And I was watching some episodes back in the weekend, and I noticed that I don't know how they do it, but you have ever counted how many pie or milkshakes they got over them?
I definitely agree with you there that once it got out of Mighty Morphin, once we saw less of them on screen, when they did come back,
It was so. It was funny.
it was funny, though at times I hesitate to use the word, but to some bits of the writing, it almost seemed a little forced,
Mm-hmm.
which I kind of hated when it came off that way. But I would say about 85% of the time they definitely hit their mark, even in the later series.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear the janitor that had to clean up all those milkshakes that got poured over those guys, that dude had to make a fortune.
Yeah. I never thought about that, but okay. um, is there something else you would say about Mighty Morphin?
I definitely think Power Rangers as a whole, but especially Mighty Morphin, has absolutely become, I would say, a cultural icon.
It is, yeah.
Is when you think mecha, with especially like giant robots fighting,
Mm,
one of the things that always comes to mind, Megazords.
yeah.
When you think like ninjas fighting, a lot of martial arts, one of the shows that comes to mind, definitely the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It's just, it's one of the few series that, in my opinion, is deserving of being a cultural phenomenon, and also it's something that anybody can pick up. They can watch it. It's something that they can enjoy. Yes, it's a little corny at times, but let's be real. What show doesn't have its corny moments? But for what it is, I think it's a good show that I would generally say sends a very good message.
Mm-hmm. And we also know there is a movie of Mighty Morphin. What's your opinion about that?
Now, if if I can ask, are we talking the original movie or are we talking about the reboot they were trying to do?
No, the original. I guess that's more in timeline. I guess.
The original, now admittedly, it's been a little while since I've seen it, so I'll confess my memory on some of it is a bit hazy.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I do remember of it, it seemed to me like it was fairly decent for what it was. They wanted to bring Power Rangers to the big screen, but I have two criticisms of it, and that it seemed a bit out of place for what it was. Like they tried to cram a little too much into too short of a time span, which I think hurt it a little bit. And it just seems, as far as the other bit of it being out of place, like it's hard in some instances to place where it would be in the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So it's as a standalone project, I would say it's fairly good, but maybe a good entry way to get somebody into Mighty Morphin. Show them, hey, this is the series that it's based on, and I guess open that door for people, maybe.
Yeah, but I also think the movies are more like a transition of the series as well. If you, for example, see the first movie, then it's also a step up to Ninja, and in a way, I can understand that. But they also could have made that just of a special, what is series of episodes that is going to make that transition.
I guess I could agree with that.
There is something. What I do want to catch in is Rita Repulsa. We know always she wants to conquer art, and we know her behavior at times. There's one thing I still can't believe that what they did, and that is that they made Rita Repulsa good. What is your opinion about that?
I think I think in greater context with the later series, it kind of makes sense, but with what we had at the time, like at the end of In Space, whenever Zordon's tube was shattered, and he
Mm-hmm.
sent that pulse all across the universe, making some of the villains good, destroying others, destroying some of the villains. It kind of seemed a little forced, and it seemed to come out of left field.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, where'd this come from? But if people, I don't know how many people paid attention in Mystic Force, Rita Repulsa was actually the Mystic Mother,
Mm-hmm.
at least in the English version. I don't know about the Super Sentai version, but it was given a bit greater context, which I think definitely helped it, because the way it was explained was she had been under a spell herself for so long, corrupted by dark magic for approximately, uh, I want to think they said it was about 12,000 years. I could be wrong on that. But given the greater context, I could see it making a bit of sense with what they gave us in Mystic Force, but on its own, I definitely think it came out of left field.
Mm-hmm. Um, there's another thing, of course. What is your opinion about the crazy monsters they created to attack the Power Rangers?
I just, I want to know what they were, what was going through their heads when they made some of those monsters. Because some of them I could kind of understand.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, some of those monsters, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, really? That's what you went with? What made you think that would be a good idea?
Yeah, I agree to that.
So, some good monsters that could actually have been intimidating, and then some you gotta wonder, what was going through their heads at the top? Did they get hit on the head? Did they? I don't really know how to explain it other than that. It's just I had to wonder what was going through their heads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sometimes they were very crazy, and sometimes like I used to, if you see the monster, then I was thinking, okay, I just only have to laugh because it is ridiculous, but okay, and not to think about the people who have to wear those suits. Those have to be hot.
Ooh, especially in the summertime as well.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about the Sentai, have you ever seen those episodes?
I've seen bits and pieces of Sentai. I think the one I've seen the most of, actually, there's two that I think of that I've seen. I would say I've seen probably about half of Opera Ranger, which is what they based Dino Thunder off of,
Mm.
and then I cannot, I can't think of what the Sentai name of it is, but oh darn, which one is that? Having a slight brain fart, trying to remember. It's anyway. I can't remember the Sentai name of it,
Mm.
but it's the Sentai version of Operation Overdrive. I've
Okay.
seen about half of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely, I would say, in some instances, slight bits of culture shock.
Is it?
Not necessarily in a bad way, but kind of surprising at the differences in the American version and the Japanese version.
Mm-hmm. Is it something you would recommend to watch?
I would say yes, so people can see the source material if they want to know, okay, what did it borrow its inspiration from? And in some instances, if people are looking for a more grittier, more adult type of theme, some of the seasons and some of the events in those seasons can actually get pretty dark in the Sentai version compared to the American Power Rangers version.
Yeah.
Like one example that I'm sure you would remember as well in Mighty Morphin. Of course, we know once Tommy lost the Green Ranger powers, he still lived. It's
Mm-hmm.
just the power coin was essentially out of power, and that was it. Well, in the Sentai version, the Green Ranger actually died once his powers were out.
Interesting.
So if they had followed fully with what we had got, because Mighty Morphin was actually a hybrid adaptation of two different Sentai series.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Tommy's White Ranger suit looks so different compared to some of the others. If they had followed Super Sentai, then we never would have had, Tommy post Mighty Morphin.
Mm-hmm.
We never would have had Zeo Ranger 5 Tommy, Red Turbo Tommy when he was Turbo for a while. We never would have had him again in Dino Thunder or any of the stuff he's been in since then. And it would have drastically changed the series.
Yeah. Agree to that. Um, let's talk about the Dragon Zords. What you want to tell about that?
Like, which Megazord I would want if I could get one? Or can I ask for a little context?
Well, suit yourself in that one because I do think you can talk about a lot about the Megazords and Dragon Zord of Tommy. With the power coins, of course, and the Dragon Dagger.
The one, like, as far as the Zords, I would say, I definitely wouldn't mind having the Dragon Zord because I think it was definitely an underrated Zord, and it didn't see enough, in my opinion, screen time as I would have liked it to have seen.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like the Zords overall that Tommy has used, I would have loved to have had the I don't know exactly what they called it in Dino Thunder, but it was the combination of the Stegazord and the White Dragozord that Tommy piloted for a brief amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed to be one of the more potent Megazords that we've seen in a while. And that's not to say that there hasn't been some potent Megazords, because there absolutely has. But just speaking in terms of ones that Tommy has used, that I would say ekes out the Dragon Zord, if ever so slightly. But it would be, in my opinion, about I would say probably a 51-49 split. It's that close in terms of power.
Yeah, I always enjoyed to watch it fight in a way. They made that very. For when I was young, that was one of the greatest thing I always thought about Mighty Morphin is that the Zords and all the journey to better Zords and more powerful Zords. I always liked that in a way. And I think probably kids of today are maybe watching it in a way maybe be a little bit different than we would do in our younger self, but yeah. Talking about the Megazord, have you ever seen that video clip about on I think there was a Morphin Con of Comic Con, and somebody did a cosplay of the Megazord, and JDF actually summoned the Megazord, and they had all the sounds of it.
I actually did get to see that, and that's probably one of my favorite videos to come out of one of the conventions like that, because how often can you honestly say you've dressed as the Megazord, you've been called out by the Green Ranger himself, and not only that, but it's on camera, everybody's going to see it, that's always going to be a bit of bragging rights to his friends, potentially any kids, grandkids, that sort of thing. Like, hey, kids, let me show you the time that I was at one of the conventions and I got called by the Green Ranger. I mean, how cool is that going to be, if nothing else, for the TV history, the movie history of it?
Yeah, I really loved that scene. Very awesome. And I personally think JDF is a very cool dude. And he does a lot of conventions and is always there for his fans. And we as fans have to applaud him for that because I think it's very tough on those people that doing the conventions. It would be draining you, but yeah, I really love that scene, and I thought there was another video of the very old video game of Mighty Morphin. I don't know if you have seen it, but have you ever played the Mighty Morphin games?
I've gotten to play a very little bit of one of them that I want to think, and don't hold me to this, but I want to think it was on the NES. Or no, let's see, Mighty Morphin would have been 93, so it would have been the Super Nintendo, the Super NES that it came out for.
I've it was that was a commercial I saw on Facebook, and that was about a very I think it is 16 or 32-bit on Sega.
I
Uh,
was not aware of that one, actually.
I'm going to look that up for you because it's a little commercial with Rita and the Power Rangers, and they are, you can see, it's like, oh, what's it called? There was I think it is in a 16-bit. Um, yeah, it's very 2D and with very lousy pixels, and it's very well nostalgic to us. But it is very funny to see.
Now, I do have, actually sitting behind me, I've got my actual original N64 from the 90s, from when I was a kid, and I do actually have a copy of the Lightspeed Rescue,
Hmm.
one that they came out with for the Nintendo 64. Now, it's not my original cartridge because I never had one of those growing up,
Mm-hmm.
but I was able to get a deal at a local card shop at the time. It was, some of the card shops or places you can go and buy your comics, trading
Mm-hmm.
cards, that kind of jazz. And because I was a regular in there, it was the guy that owned the shop. I was going in to pick up some stuff that I'd ordered anyway, and he's like, "Come over here for a minute." Says, "We just got this in today," and I ended up. He was gonna sell it for about $15 at the time, but I stored it for half that, and I only paid about $7.50 because I was a regular, and he knew I liked the Power Rangers. So, kind of a cool story about the games I could tell.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you have any knowledge of how if there are other Power Rangers games? I mean, like in Mighty Morphin, or would that be just the only one they brought out?
To my knowledge, aside from possibly the Sega one we were talking about earlier, that's the only one I know of from Mighty Morphin. Now, I do know of one that kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people, is they had actually brought out a Dino Thunder game for the GameCube,
Okay.
which I don't know what all you can do in the game. I've never actually got to play it. I've only seen bits and pieces of footage here and there. But one of the missions involves you using the Dinozord, the combination of the Pterazord, the Tyrannosaur, and the Tricerazords. And it looks like there's like a jumping puzzle over lava. I'm not exactly sure what they would be doing, but the last time I had saw anything on that game, and this is about 10 years ago that I saw anything about it, was going for about $60 at the time used. So it could be going for a lot more today, could be going for a lot less. I've not really found a lot on it since.
Okay. Just what moves you to be a Mighty Morphin Power Ranger fan?
Well, there's the nostalgia factor. I would be lying if I said that wasn't part of it. But especially whenever I was younger, that kind of stuff. Every kid always wanted to be a superhero at some point. And, Power Rangers was what I thought of as being a hero before, I got into some of the Green Lantern comics and some of the stuff I'm into today.
Mm-hmm.
And, I liked, being able to do that kind of stuff. And, even growing up, I was always the kind of person that, I wanted to do something to protect other people. And until my health decided not to cooperate with me during my teenage years, I actually had plans to, enlist in, the United States military, hopefully go to the Air Force. That unfortunately didn't work out. And it was in part because of Mighty Morphin in the series like that.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of had inspired me to want to do stuff like that.
Do you think there is in the or in episodes that are a message from like life lessons or social lessons in it, like you can see, for example, in Star Trek? But
I would say yes, there are definitely some very good life lessons you can draw from some of the episodes. Maybe not as pronounced as some of the Trek stuff could be,
mm-hmm.
but one episode that comes to mind of one of the more modern series, and I use this one as an example because it's more recent. Maybe some people have seen it. Is there was an episode of I want to think it was in the Super Megaforce season, but it could have been in the regular Megaforce season. There's a guy who is a bully at the school and is trying to pick on the Red Ranger Troy without realizing, who he is.
Yeah, I saw that.
That sort of thing. And Troy didn't back down from him. He was able to solve it without it coming to violence, without them having to fight each other, which I definitely think is a good thing. And I absolutely believe that people should be able to solve their problems without violence. Mm-hmm. And that was just a good way of showing that, yes, you can actually do that sort of thing. And it teaches people to, I would definitely say, stand up for what's right. Don't give up fighting for what's right. And don't be afraid to help other people. Because sometimes that's its own reward.
Yeah, I agree to that. It's that I actually saw that episode, and I really liked it in a way of, like you said, it is still an issue in society what more have to talk about, and I can relate to that because I always have been bullied in a way. So yeah, that was a good episode, and they have done that nicely. I think I have my last question for you. Do you have any favorite episodes people need to watch?
I would kind of have to. I'd have to think on that one. But a few of the episodes I would definitely have to say is oh darn, I would probably have to say when I'd have to say when Connor fights the revived Zeltrax in the Battleizer mode and just royally curb stomps him and smacks him around because he was so he had already pretty much gotten slapped down by Zeltrax pretty hard earlier in the episode, but he comes back and just through the sheer force of will of wanting to beat Zeltrax and wanting to protect Krista, a classmate of his, which he also coincidentally kind of had a crush on, just through sheer force of will summoned the power to enter the Battleizer mode without having to have the other Rangers give him any kind of extra power. Then I would say probably as another good episode is it's actually the two-parter episode that is the finale of Dino Charge, where they finally beat Sledge, they finally beat all of the bad guys there and end up creating the Dino Charge dimension at the end of it. Those are probably, if I had to pick two off the top of my head, that's two that I can think of. But there's definitely others I could think of if, I'd had more time to think about it, but definitely those two for sure.
And if you have to choose from Mighty Morphin?
If I had to choose from Mighty Morphin, I don't know that it would necessarily be strictly an episode, but more so the episode arc is right after they had lost the Dino Zords and they were trying to find Ninjor to get the ninja powers and the ninja Zords. Because you actually felt, especially as a young kid at the time, like the Zords have been destroyed. What are they realistically going to do? Like, how are they going to get out of this one and beat the bad guy? And it was just that actual suspense of, oh my god, they might actually lose. Thankfully they didn't. We know how it happened, but just all of that at the time.
Yeah, I can agree to that. It's only, I think there are more episodes that really are fun to watch, and one of my favorite is the episode that Goldar kidnapped Kimberly, and Kimberly started acting as Rita Repulsa. And she did that well that it's just so funny, and um, also that brings a comical note in the Mighty Morphin, I think. Is there something else you would like to finish with about Mighty Morphin?
I definitely wish that they would release some more of the anniversary morphers, that sort of thing, especially some of the Green Ranger stuff and the White Ranger morphers, because we never really got too many of those. I do actually have the 20th anniversary morpher with the metal power coins.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta have the Green Ranger. I gotta have the White Ranger to go with my collection because reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But and I'd love to see them do morphers of the other series too, but especially those because you can't go wrong with the originals.
That's true. That's true. I think a lot of people, or people who are were children in at that time, that it is not only nostalgic or very familiar, but I think also it's that they would watch daily, and it's something from, oh, I'm going to go home from school, and the first part I'm going to do is watch Mighty Morphin. Well, that was with me and my brother as well. I think a lot of people can say the same. And I always have loved it. I don't know about you, but
Oh, most definitely.
well, thank you so much, Captain Blade, for being my guest today, and I hope to talk to you again in another episode.
That sounds like a plan.
Sounds good to me. Thank you so much again. Next episode, we will talk about Doctor Who. Let me know what you think of this episode, or if you'd like to write a review, you can do that on the podcast site, BeanPod, Google Podcast, the Facebook group, or Discord server. I am Orinda, and thank you for listening to Orinda Talks Fantasy and Sci-Fi. See you next time.